Welcome to the Washington Federal Update for girls basketball in the state of Washington, brought to you also by Scorebook Live and its coaching partners who've been working hard to get the information to you from a coach's perspective. I'm Dan Dickau, sitting here with our girls expert, Freddie Rehkow. And Freddie, let's just jump right into it because about 2 weeks left in the regular season. There's been a lot of really good games, but in particular, there's been two games over the past week that you and I have talked about that have been headliners. You talk about first Woodinville versus previous number one Kenbridge. Talk about that game.
It was a game that we, exactly like we probably figured it would be. Last year at state, they went into overtime. The other night, they went into overtime as well. The same result. Woodinville came out on top. At state, Woodinville hit a buzzer beater to win. On Tuesday night, they went to overtime, ended up winning by 1 point, 72-71 over a very tough Kenbridge. So we saw the the previous number one go down, and it was an interesting game. You had the bigs of Kenbridge controlling the paint. You had Jordan Jenkins, who we've kind of talked about, 6'3" post. 17 points, 13 rebounds, fouls out in the third quarter. Big difference. All of a sudden, Jaquia Miller, their 6'4" post, had to kind of take over. She ended up with 30 points, 24 rebounds. Once again, those are those two posts that I talked about that can control a game, but they lost one of them. Woodinville took advantage of that. They used their speed and just that team play. Mia Hughes, who we just spotlighted, what a great way to show what she can do. Goes out, drops 37 points on them, leads the Falcons to victory. So previous number one goes down. Then we get a new number one, and back-to-back nights, we lose the next number one.
Yeah, you kind of led it right into that. So the previous number one loses a tough one. So Mount Spokane jumps into the number one ranking of the power rankings for Scorebook Live, and they placed a team that you know well, Central Valley. That's the game that's been spotlighted for a number of people here on the east side of the state for quite a while.
Absolutely. They played a few weeks ago. It was a non-league game. Mount Spokane got them by, I believe, 11 points. It showed that CV could play with them. And then all of a sudden it comes back. It's a league counter last night, and Central Valley comes, and I'll tell you, Central Valley came to play. The defensive pressure was all over the place. They pushed pace. I think it kind of caught Mount Spokane off guard a little bit. CV's had a couple close games, and so they were kind of ready for this. I think Mount Spokane has had some games that weren't real close, and I think they probably didn't quite expect to see the defensive pressure and pace that Central Valley threw at them last night. Central Valley goes out, builds a 17-point lead by halftime. They literally, it almost seemed like they couldn't miss. Maddie Similink, the point guard, was up in Aspen Adams, who's their leading scorer's face the entire night. Makes it tough for her to get some good shots, and she's a great shooter, but the pressure last night was relentless. And all of a sudden you see CV go from 17 up to 26 up, and you could just tell Mount Spokane just didn't quite have their best game, but Central Valley didn't really care.
Well, that's one of those things where when you've traditionally been the power, you know how to play with a little bit of that target on your back. So whether it's high school boys, high school girls, that's an adjustment for everybody. Last week we spotlighted 3A and 4A and some of the teams that might have a strong case for being contenders for state titles. Let's look at 2A and 1A this week. First off, start with 2A. Who's catching your eye?
I'll tell you, the 2As, I actually got a chance to go out and watch a little bit. I got to go see East Valley play Clarkston. East Valley's been kind of the number one in the 3As. Clarkston was undefeated going into that, with their East Valley's one loss being down at Clarkston. So you knew East Valley had something in store for them. Interesting game right from the start. Clarkston comes out, builds about a 12-14 point lead. East Valley just keeps battling. Just the pressure and just attack. They caught fire a little bit, got on a roll. Clarkston's point guard, Ashlyn Wallace, who is a spunky little guard that can drop some points on the board, gets in foul trouble, goes out. East Valley makes a run. Comes down to almost the very end, and East Valley pulls out a 3-point win over Clarkston, giving Clarkston now their lone loss. And you would think this is perfect. I mean, this is 1-1. What happens? Generally what we see a lot of times, you get the letdown. East Valley, after getting that victory, goes and loses to Cheney, gives them their second loss. Clarkston comes back, wins a tight one with West Valley. And so they're building. The trilogy will take place February the 5th. And so and it's down in Clarkston. So we'll see that rubber match right there
Yeah.
to see who wins. But so you got those two. You got Archbishop Murphy. Archbishop Murphy's 14-2 right now. Just came off a big victory over the number 7 ranked Shorecrest from the 3As. So you got a 2A beating a top 3A, showing that they're legit. And Archbishop Murphy, they're no stranger to state play. So I think when you're looking at the top teams, Archbishop Murphy, Clarkston, East Valley of Spokane, and you can't forget Linden. Linden's going to be there. The same thing with like a Burlington Edison or a White River. They know how to get there. So I think that this 2A battle is going to be kind of fun.
So lots of good action, lots of good interest leading up into making the Yakima Sun Dome at the 2A level. If we switch over now to the 1A level, if I'm not mistaken, the only 2 undefeated teams that are left on the girls' side in high school basketball in the state of Washington are at the 1A level. Am I correct?
That's correct. You know, last week when we talked, there was about 5 or 6 undefeated teams, and all of a sudden, you know, we're getting down to crunch time, and this is when, you know, you start seeing some of the teams really stepping up and really starting to find their groove. And that, as a coach, that's what you want. You want to see your team peak it towards the end of the season. Doesn't matter how good you're at the beginning. You want to be playing your best ball at the end. With that in mind, we've got a couple teams, LaSalle and Bellevue Christian. Those are our 2 undefeated teams. I see them as probably 2 of the top 4. Who else is in that mix? Linden Christian, your defending state champions, who lost a tough one to Anacortes, and then you have Kashmir with Haley Van Lith, and their only 2 losses are to LaSalle and Mount Spokane. So you've got 4 really good teams there, and I'm sure there'll be a few others. Annie Wright's going to be kind of in the mix. Their leading scorer, Juliana Walker, that we talked about last week.
Yeah.
Between her and Jasmine Stone, they're averaging almost 70 points a game. And Juliana, the last time I checked it, you know, according to stats that have been compiled, is one of the top in the nation.
And pretty impressive. So it sounds like the 1A is going to be a heck of an adventure getting to Yakima as well. Let's talk about a specific league now. We're on the east side of the state. You've had a chance to see a lot of the Great Northern League teams in person throughout this season. Tell us about the Great Northern League and how good the basketball is for 2A schools.
I think for the Great Northern League, it's going to come down, you know, East Valley of Spokane and Clarkston. Those are going to be the 2 favorites. By far, they're the ones that get probably the most publicity. They're the ones that should be. They're playing at the top of their game. However, you got teams like Cheney who beats East Valley. You've got West Valley, who is a rivalry for East Valley, but they've also played Clarkston to some close games. Those 4 teams, that's what's going to make it a tough one. And I think when it's all said and done, we'll probably see the 4th matchup between Clarkston and East Valley from what I've seen. The kids that they have on those 2 teams are probably heads above everyone else's from what I've seen so far.
So sounds like another exciting league finish here on the east side of the state with the Great Northern League. We look at the GSHL, we look at the Metro, Kinko, GSL. You know, there's a lot of tight races across the state, so it's going to be interesting. It's going to be exciting. But one of the things Scorebook Live is trying to do is bring a lot of exciting new features to high school basketball fans across the state. And one of the ways that we like to try to do it is by coming from a coach's perspective and even a player's perspective. So tell us some of the things that you've been working on, Freddie, that we can look for in the next couple weeks.
You know, I think one of the things that often gets overlooked is what goes on behind the scenes. You see records and you see stats, but it's getting to know those players and the coaches, and even some of the mentors that have helped lead some of these coaches to where they're at today. With that in mind, we're going to be looking at some of the coaches' spotlights. I mean, looking at Gabe Madrano from Lewis and Clark, David Pratt from Mount Spokane, Brian Hill from Glacier Peak. And on the flip side of that, some of the players that also go with some of those programs, Haley Grambo from Glacier Peak, Jacinta Buckley, who's one of the leading players here in the GSL, committed to UNLV. And with these, we have some of the legendary coaches. And it's hard to, you know, I think as a coach, you'd always hope that somebody would look at you, you know, as someone who's been a huge mentor, has changed the game. So the first 2 that we'll look at there are Al Aldridge from Prairie and Jeannie Helfer from Meade, Mount Spokane. So.
Well, you know the girls' side of basketball in the state of Washington as well as anybody. Glad to have you on our team. He's Freddie Rehkow, I'm Dan Dickau, and that's been the Washington Federal basketball update for the girls in the state of Washington.